Okay, so the title of my talk is Science is a Girl Thing. So it's been a concerted effort over the last few years at trying to interest young women aged 11 to 17 in getting into STEM and into science. So when I decided that I was going to do a talk tonight, I thought a good place to start was to look at those campaigns and to see how they reach out to young women, what the content is and what they're going to achieve. But when I started to look at schemes for women in science or young women in science, I was struck immediately by the prominence of the term girl right in the middle of the logo. And to begin with, I thought, well, that's kind of logical. You know, this is a scheme, it's to interest girls in science, it seems to make sense. You can have girls and science together there to try and tell girls that this is science for them. So two of the main prominent campaigns at the moment, Science It's a Girl Thing, which is run by the European Commission, has girl very prominently there, and a more recent scheme called STEMettes, Girls Do Science Too, is a more recent one that has been started by Anne-Marie in Macedon. So the focus tonight is really to consider what the consequences of aiming these particular schemes at girls is. So Hannah's already introduced the idea that gendering starts at a really young age. We have set ideas about what girls do, what boys do, and how we see their futures unfolding. So I thought this is an important thing to look at. So one way of thinking about this was to use a framework of identity called membership categorisation. Now, Nikander, half of my slide has disappeared, Nikander suggested that talk is an action-oriented social activity through which dilemmas of multiple and conflicting identities are managed and solved. And one of the things that each membership category, well, you can think about a membership category as a type of identity. So each membership category has a set of category-bound behaviours associated with it. So that's essentially how members of that category could, should, or do behave. So I thought one way to think about this was to apply this framework to the identity of girl and think about how girls could, should, and do behave. So the first thing that I thought I'd do is I'd do a Google image search, because I thought this would allow me to get at the stereotypical categorisation of girl. So what do outsiders to that category include in this girl category? So you can see that we've got a very wide range of girls here, ranging from the toddler all the way up to the 20s. So we can see that girl, before we start, is a very broad and non-specific category. There's also a dilemma that's emerging here as well, in that there are sort of emergent sexualisation of these girls. So you've either got, hopefully, non-sexualised, all the way up to, can't quite see it here, but highly sexualised in a sort of French, slippy camisole thing. So I think this is potentially problematic if we're going to be aiming a campaign at girls, because girls is such a homogeneous category. But given that was just a Google image search, I thought the best thing to do is to really go and look at the literature. So what do people who identify as girls consider to be a girl? What do they consider to be a girl's category-bound behaviours? There was very little in the membership categorisation literature that looked specifically at the category of girl. They tended to look at it in relation to ageing or eating or some other factor. I thought this one was interesting because in relation to the point I just made that girl is a very extended age category from toddler to 20s, it's evidence from this data that women considerably older than that age still identify as girls. So Laura, who is there on her 50th birthday, said, "Way inside one is this, somehow a little girl still, that you haven't necessarily even grown to be a mature woman yet. Like, one sometimes wants to behave like whimsically, and to even act childishly." So what we can take from that bit of data, even though it's taken out of context, is that when we talk about girl, we're talking about someone who behaves whimsically. and childishly. So that starts to give us a clue as to what the membership category, the category-bound behaviours are of girl. However, that was from outside the membership category of girl. This was a mature woman aged 50. So it's important to look at what girls in the age category of 11 to 17 think of girl. So in the study by Woolhouse et al., we have Beth and Tiffany talking about girls and eating. Beth says, yeah, I think like a girly girl would eat like very little things, and like a tomboy would eat loads. Yeah, a girly girl would be one of them that like, oh, I'm going on a diet, all salads and like. Just checking it's all on the slide. So Beth and Tiffany are talking about girls and they're talking about tomboys. And they're suggesting that their categorisation of girl, the girly girl, is a girl who's restricted. She's restricted because she restricts what she eats. She's elsewhere in the data, this girly girl category was extended, and it's shown to be a heteronormative categorisation that was imbued with passivity, dependence, and weakness. Neither Beth nor Tiffany wanted to be identified as a girly girl. A girly girl was something other than what they were, so they resisted this category of girliness. And just to point out, actually, what we're starting to see now is that girls are associated with being childish, with being whimsical, with being restricted, dependent, passive. All of these characteristics are characteristics that are not going to be valued in STEM. So girls not looking good so far. Now, this was a campaign that was, it's a little bit outdated now. Science, it's a girl thing. It was produced by the European Commission a couple of years ago, and it caused massive controversy. As you can see, it's completely full of pink, supercharged hyperfemininity in the title with pink lipstick. Science, it's a girl thing. So essentially what this does is it portrays a very narrow view of what it means to be a girl, what a girl could or should be. It also presents a very narrow view of what science is, and I'll show you in a minute what the video entails. Now I know it's kind of like going over old ground, but this has now been considerably updated, and the logo is now in a sort of a blue or a yellow rather than the pink. But I do think it illustrates something about how girls orient to the identity of girls, or how young women orient to the identity of girls. This caused a massive outcry, but it would seem that the European Commission didn't get complaints from girls, they got complaints from older scientists. The girls' response to this was rather positive, so we'll have a look at it and then consider why. Oh no, what have I done? Uh-oh. It's working. We might not have sound. Oh. I don't want to touch that. Right? Yeah. That's what science means to me. So we saw in the previous data extract that Beth and Tiffany resisted this form of stereotypical feminine identity. Yet when this kind of material was shown to young women aged 11 to 17, they seemed to be perfectly fine with it. So, what's going on? Later on in the same study as the one I was talking about before, Beth is talking again, but this time she's talking with a girl called Jean. And she says, yeah, I don't eat that much when I'm with men. Like, when I'm with my cousins, even if it's just family with my cousins, it's like I feel self-conscious. When I'm with my friends, I just stuff it in my face if I'm hungry. I just let it go. It's like I'm a slob, seriously, it's like so disgusting. But when I eat with a guy, it's like small. Jean says, you want to look dainty. So although Beth has already indicated that she resists this identity of girly girl, she also, what comes through in this data is that she also finds it alluring, seductive and difficult to resist. So even as she resists it, she's drawn into behaving in stereotypically feminine ways. And this might go some way to explaining why girls might have an ambivalent relationship with those kind of super feminine images in that advert. Incidentally, Beth and Tiffany, in the earlier extract, or in that data, they did orient away from this girly identity, but instead they constructed themselves as autonomous and choiceful individuals who exercise choice over their ways of being and their ways of thinking. So perhaps girls, rather than orienting to that kind of feminine identity, we should speak to the element of those girls that is choiceful and autonomous. Oh, hang on a minute. The other point to make is that adolescence for all ages, irrespective of gender, is a time of transition, marginalisation and in-betweenness. So I question the aspirational power of the term girl, and that most young people aspire to be grown-ups rather than to be girls. Do we really expect young women to, they may identify as girls, but they probably don't aspire to become girls. And this becomes ever more noticeable if you put girl together with scientist. Because when you do that, what you get is a whole new set of stereotypical representations. You've got the young hot science nerd, and the super feminine sexy scientist, and somewhere in between, a form of sexy librarian. So the categories that are available, that become available with girl scientist, aren't that positive either. So although girls, or young women probably don't aspire to become girls, they also probably don't aspire to become girl scientists. In fact, girl scientist might constitute what we call a category activity puzzle. In the same way that we can do gender joking or gender marking by using terms like women drivers and male nurse, girl scientist seems to operate in the same way. Sachs suggests that social change is evident, becomes visible as such associations diminish, are replaced or deleted. So when we no longer feel it's necessary to comment that a nurse is a male, then that kind of stereotype is diminished and dying away. So as long as we keep placing girl together with scientist, we're remarking on the remarkability of those two terms together. And we're also opening up the whole area to a whole set of gender joking. So in summary, the category girl can be associated with all kinds of negative category-bound activities like passivity, dependence and weakness. It's also a contested category, so girls don't necessarily relate in a straightforward manner to the identity of girl. And finally, girl scientists act as a category identity puzzle, opening up the opportunity for gender joking and maintaining the remarkability of finding girls in science. So, if girl is problematic as a category, what are the alternatives? When I first came across the STEMX campaign, I was a little bit puzzled actually about the name STEMX. until I went on the website and then I saw they got a definition of this. And they said that a STEMette is a female who has the capacity to go into one or more of the STEM fields. And that got me thinking about the possibility of could we actually do away with pre-existing gender categories in this domain, and instead of aiming these campaigns at girls, maybe invent a whole new category for girls to sit inside, like STEMettes. I'm not totally into the name, but it demonstrated a principle to me that actually we could create a new membership category without the baggage that goes along with girl. The other alternative is to adopt a pre-existing category like Science Girl did. Girl. I'm not going to keep saying girl. Science Girl, when I say Science Girl, I mean the GRL variety. So girl's an existing category that emerges from Riot Girl, who are a group of young feminist activists and artists. So they've taken that concept and applied it into the science field. And although I know that young women are often ambivalent about the identity of being a feminist, it doesn't seem to have affected the Science Girl campaign adversely. So those are two possibilities: either the creation of whole new categories like STEMettes that girls can identify with or young women can identify with, or the use of pre-existing categories as another possible way forward. So, in conclusion, appealing to the identity of a girl is problematic in the context of campaigns that attempt to draw women into STEM and into science. To arrive at a productive way forward, we need to understand in some depth how young women orient to and categorise themselves in terms of their identity as young women or girls. Now I hand over to you. Thank you, Rachel.